Hello there. Thank you for coming and joining us for Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery. This whole month, the month of March, we've been working on the Living in Your Freedom series. We've been jumping into living free and looking at that path that we need to be on towards our journey of loving and honoring ourselves, making ourselves that priority, and taking care of ourselves from the inside out. And so the topics that we've focused on throughout this month have been clarity, purpose, integrity, pride, and direction. Now, if you missed any of them, all you have to do is go to the YouTube page. The replays are there. Really what we're hoping to do here is just show you in so many different ways how you can find relief in your life. Today we wanted to wrap up, and I brought Laura back because we both have such, unique and different experiences with our topic today. But also what I find is that, everybody that I meet has their own version of this. So because we both have very distinct and maybe opposite ends of the spectrum types of situations, I thought, this would be a really great time. And Laura was super excited to come and join us. But anyway, today we want to be talking about how we realized that being our own advocate was the most critical piece for us, and how nothing was working out in our favor until we did, right? There was improper diagnoses, and that's a really poor way to say that word, diagnoses, I apologize. There were improperly prescribed medications or poorly monitored medications. The interventions were almost like, here, let's toss this at it and see if it works, and so on and so forth. So we have, these very specific things, and mine might be the most clear-cut version or example to give, but, and I have several different stories, but when we talk about what brought me to this place, what brought me into this recovery lifestyle and being so enthusiastic about it, that was my downfall with a physiological addiction. That, sure, I had an addiction over 30 plus years with alcohol, although it had become a very functioning, low severity issue for many, many years, but still diagnosably an addiction to alcohol. And I had already, overcome my eating disorders and disordered eating, and, really had a lot of triumphs over trauma and trauma responses, and was really in a place of high functioning because I had, met my husband, and we had created this amazing family, and I learned what unconditional positive regard was, but I kept that alcohol along. Now, so with my story, there was this long journey of physical ailment. And I know I've touched on this before, where I say, like, I had near-death experiences myself. For a long time, I struggled with endometriosis, chronic cysts, and just a lot of high severity pain and physical issues, right? Like, so the cysts would rupture and all of these things. But I kept telling them, hey, something's not right. Something's not working right inside of me. And I knew this at 17 and a half years old. And at 18, it just started getting worse and worse and worse. And finally at, after 2 miscarriages, right? They finally did, a little bit of, cleanup work in there, and said, yes, you do. You have endometriosis. This should buy you some time. You're way too young. We don't want to do, a hysterectomy, not even a partial, right? Like, no. And then, it kept going, and things kept happening, and the illness kept getting worse. And I'm really fast forwarding, but, early menopause set in. And so by the time I was 27, I think I was in full blown menopause, had every single symptom. And I'm like, look, this isn't right. This is just not right. I'm 27 years old. I'm having hot flashes, nausea, just all the things, the sweats, and they're like, we have never seen anybody with every single symptom active of menopause before. So here I am with my specialist, not ever having seen a case like this before. Finally, they decide, yeah, you know what, we will do a hysterectomy. And what it took was me having a near-death experience in the ER because 3 cysts had ruptured at the same time. And by the time I got to the ER, because I have this high tolerance for pain, whatever, and I just kept putting it off. I'm like, they're not going to do anything anyway, right? Like every time I went in there for all of these hives that I would wake up with, they'd just give me Benadryl, high dose Benadryl, get under control and send me home. Come to find out, post this hysterectomy, that, took everything out. Like they hoped to salvage something, but there was nothing salvageable. It was mush. It was completely just gone. And so they did this full hysterectomy and never had another hive again. Like I was outwardly exhibiting like, hello, there's toxins in my body that aren't having anywhere to go. And everybody's just kind of scratching their head. You're too young for a hysterectomy. No, I'm not. And so, I finally got that. And that happened. And this was when I was 29. So it still took till I was 29. So 18 to 29, suffering, nobody listening. And then, after that, of course, postmenopausal, I developed some, organic anxiety. And so, I had a close relationship with my GP, and she's like, you know what, I'm just going to give you a low dose Xanax. She knew I was a daily drinker. Sure, I'm an adult. Sure, I know, you don't combine the two, but I thought that was more of a safety issue, right? Like more of a, you don't want to knock yourself out kind of thing. So, whereas I didn't necessarily mix the two, the fact that they were synergistically working inside of my system exacerbated it. So you fast forward 5 years, which I know now that shouldn't even have been prescribed for that length of time. It created this physiological addiction. And I'm being real brief and to the point, if you will. But, I all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in this physiological crazy, right? And so I just couldn't do it on my own. So, I told my husband, I'm like, look, I need help. I can't physically, I'm just unable to maintain this anymore. I've got to go figure out what's going on. And so then I went into the medical detox, right? Because I wanted to make sure I was safe. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all these things that were going on. And I didn't understand because I considered myself to be relatively healthy, exercised, ate right, had worked on all these relationships. Anyway, they wanted to give me all of these pills. And I was like, no, I'm here to get all of this stuff out of my system so that I can be operating in an organic space, right? Like if I wanted to keep mind altering, mood altering, whatever substances on board, like I'll just keep the ones I know how they are, no. So, fast forward, they're, all of their time restraints, I didn't follow either. I was so determined, like, I don't know how I did it, but I got myself physically stabilized in 3 days instead of 10. And then I, went and did, a 30-day, but then even in that transitioning out of the 30-day, like the standard protocols didn't speak to me, like go to a meeting, breakfast, lunch, dinner, go to a meeting every day and just sit in the rooms. That didn't speak to me. Like I wanted to learn, I wanted to educate myself. So, I had to really be an advocate, and I actually did. I learned, and I went back and I collaborated with that medical professional that I had worked with. And, I told her, I'm like, hey, I learned this in school, and she didn't know, like, hey, you don't prescribe Xanax for more than a 2-month period of time. You don't prescribe Xanax to a daily drinker. Like, and so, we had this conversation and she was very apologetic and, like I said, we had a really good relationship, but I still notice these things happening now. As somebody that struggles with autoimmune, everybody's just scratching their head, everybody's just scratching their head. We don't know. You're a different kind of case. You're unique. We've never seen a case like yours before, yada, yada. So I still find that I have to advocate for myself. And I'm like, no, this medication isn't working well for me. It's not what I need. It's not an allergy. It's, whatever, right? Like it's something completely different. And I have to dig and do research myself and say this and present those what are those medical journal reports, the white paper. I have to present and say, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm experiencing in this. And then, oh, sure. Okay. So anyway, what I'm getting at here is, something that's the basis of the work that I do. Like all of my clients, they have to be their own advocate. They have to be able to articulate, what is the outcome you want? What is your biggest struggle? What is your biggest problem? And so we have some sort of direction, because if we continue to go through life, like a large part of society is, which is just do it the way they tell you to, the professionals tell you to, right? Without editing and deleting, then we're not being our own advocate. And we're going to end up with improper medications over a long period of time. We're going to not be living in an organic state. We're going to, not prompt people to learn beyond what they tell you in school, regardless of how high a level of an education you have, right? Like I'm constantly learning. I'm always digging, because I have to keep learning from my clients so that I can keep, teaching them more, because emotional intelligence, I don't know as though there's an end to learning for emotional intelligence. I don't know that there's a ceiling for that. I haven't found one yet. So, we really want to bring that in here. And so I could go on and on for hours, but, Laura has like a very amazing, heartwarming, if you will, story of becoming her own advocate and learning how to navigate for herself in first position and not giving up until she found her right fit. Right. So Laura, again, people hear from me all the time. Let's hear from you. Let's hear about your journey and how you advocated for yourself and some of the examples that match with that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think, listening to you, I didn't grow up in the medical world. So I think that really helped, because I have this attitude when working with the medical world of, I am not bowing down to you. I accept your help and I hope that you can help me. But, if you say something that doesn't sit right with me, I'm not doing it. And I think that helped a lot for me to be an advocate for myself, because for me, I'd been going through major depression. That's what it looked like, that I had major depression, anxiety. And then I got diagnosed with PTSD. And I remember saying, I don't have PTSD. They're like, do you have nightmares? Yeah. You have PTSD. Oh, so that was kind of funny. But but she's like, oh man, she was scared to give me anything because I'd never had any medications before. And so that was kind of funny going through that. But very quickly into it, I accidentally I got triggered from sexual assault when I was 12. And it was shortly after that my first insider came out, and I was like, what the heck just happened? And then I found out the word dissociation, and I was like, okay, I've got a word. And so I automatically just went to town and started educating myself, because that's what I do. And quickly found discussingdissociation.com. I will sing her praises for the rest of my life, because she saved my life. I took the dissociative scale about the signs of unresolved trauma and all the different roles in a dissociative system. And I'm like, this is speaking to me, but I'm not sure. And so then I was, things had ramped up pretty quickly, and I was in a psych hospital, and, they saw me, I've got this very flamboyant personality, and they're like, you have bipolar. I mean, obviously you're way higher, you're way low. And I'm like, okay. And so I went with it, and they prescribed me Lamictal, and I wasn't having an adverse reaction to it. So I was like, okay. The programming was really helpful. Then I got into partial, and I remember saying to the psychiatrist in the partial hospitalization program, I think I have DID. Oh no, you don't have DID. It's rare. You don't have DID. And actually before that, I had connected with a pastor, and I said to him, I think I have DID. He says, oh no, you don't have DID. It's rare. You don't have DID. So I'm reading and I'm connecting with this, and this is the only thing that's making sense to me. And yet everybody I'm working with is saying, oh, no, no, no. And so finally I got the chance to actually talk to this woman online. We got on the phone and she got my parts to come out and talk. And so at the end, she's like, honey, you're dissociative. I'm like, thank you. It's like, oh, just this huge sigh of relief. But you know, it's like everybody was saying to me, oh, no, 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 but it wasn't making sense. And yeah, the Lamictal was not doing anything for me. The Zyprexa was not doing it. I asked the psychiatrist one point, I'm like, okay, now I understand bipolar is cyclical. Do people with bipolar cycle in a day? He's like, no, that doesn't happen. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I've got bipolar. So yeah, what looks like cycling is actually switching. But that's the thing I learned. And so yeah, so I went, and my first thing I'll tell you, when advocating for yourself, educate yourself, because that's what got me on the right track. And that's what got me to the people who could help me. You need to talk to people to get the keywords. The key to a search is having the right keyword, and then the doors of the kingdom open up to you. So definitely talk to people and listen.
I just wanted to pause really quick because and I apologize for, you know, breaking in there, but you said something really important, because we live in a world of Google search and you know, looking up things and getting, and I even brought it up, like I do the research and I, you know, looking things up. You were talking about doing your research. I want to make sure that we emphasize, if you're going to do your own research, that is great. Use it as knowledge, not concrete fact, number one, right? Because again, we aren't as, you know, everyday people. We're not being taught or trained, or, you know, so you have to know how old of a, let's say, a psychological journal do you read? Like how many years do you even go back? Because if you go back more than 3 years, like chances are that's already been debunked or improved or whatever. You have to make sure that it's a scholarly paper. And if it's a scholarly paper, it needs to have been reviewed by credible sources. So we're not saying, you know, just get on WebMD and take their word for, you know, for what it is. Now, WebMD, I personally find to be, you know, they can be accurate, but you also can go on Stanford, you can go, you know, on UCLA things. Anyway, and I'm using those places because they're the universities, you know, the well-known solid universities, you know, here where I live. But you've got to make smart choices in your research, because Wikipedia is not it. That can be changed and edited so by regular people. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure to put that in there. Like, yes, advocate for yourself. Yes, educate yourself. But if you're going to educate yourself, know how to properly educate yourself. Anyway. Yes, exactly. Because there is, you know, I went to the Trauma Institute. There are some major mental health sites that are considered the standard, industry standard. They didn't have the information I needed. That you're not going to get accurate information from scholarly. Some, yes, but as a whole, no. So but I do tell people, look, go do the dissociative scale, read and read and read, see what feels good, and then go to a professional with it and say, here's what I think. Now, it took a few months with my therapist, but eventually, one day, she finally said, you split yourself. I'm like, yes, I did. And then it was shortly after that. Yeah. It was shortly after that she said, okay, I can't help you anymore. I don't have the tools to help you. We need to find somebody who can help you. So I had to, and I'm telling you guys, okay, here's the thing I want you to know. I was doing all of this in crisis. I was in crisis in all of 2017. I was dealing with body memories
intense body memory, 7-8 hours a day, 5 to 6 times an hour. That went on for weeks, about 8 weeks. And then it finally quieted down after some of it got out, but I was still dealing with self-harm urges, suicidal urges. My parts were going nuts. So here I am. And that's actually something the psychologist I found said to me, said, it's a miracle that you're able to advocate for yourself, because she's seeing me switch. She's seeing I'm in utter chaos. And she's like, I don't know how you're doing it. I said, I don't know how I'm doing it either. But, you know, I think the thing about DID, I've met a lot of people with DID, and it's the nature of the beast. We had to learn how to function in a dysfunctional system. And the beautiful thing about DID is I can be suicidal, planning it, standing there. I was literally standing 10 feet away from where I am now, outside. The blade was 10 feet from me. The place where I planned to bleed out was 10 feet away from me. I was standing there for 5 minutes and saying, do I do this? And then I decided no. And then I went in and I watched TV with my family. Now, most people, when they're that bad, can't do that. But DID, we're so fragmented. We have such clear walls that we can turn it on and turn it off in an instant. And so that's just, it's the nature of the beast. But it's a beautiful power to have when you're in crisis. But yeah, so I got help. You know, the most beautiful thing my therapist told me was get a support team, build a support team, because I don't want you relying just on me. I was like, okay, fine. So I had to go find them. They weren't there. And I know, and that was really helpful. I had to make friends. I had to find people, but you know, the thing I have learned in my life is when there is a need, help shows up. So stay open. Don't keep asking, keep interviewing until you find it, because they're there and there are people who want to help. You just have to work through all those things, all those resistances, you know, but if you're willing, you can get there and you can learn and you can get the help you need. And I can tell you right now, like I said, I was hospitalized 5 times in 2017. It's now 2021, and I can now talk about my stuff. So it is possible. I remember they said to me, like, I really believe you're going to get through this. And on the other side, you're going to be helping people. And I didn't want to believe them, but they were right. They were right.
And I think
someone who's walked the walk, I found people who had walked the walk and could help me.
Yeah. And I think you're talking about something that's really, really important here, right? Because we also are in a climate where, because this is, you know, we're still in this COVID, we're still in, you know, this period of, you know, uncertainty, you know, and there are a lot of people that are like, not wanting to pay, you know, for a therapist, a coach, or a program. But, you know, I have to encourage people. I get it. Times are scary, but you cannot put a dollar figure on your life. Like you just can't. There are ways. Like I've helped people navigate utilizing their FSA and HSAs, but also there are social supports. And I'm going to tell you, like, I have a larger social network now than I have ever had in my whole life, because we have this digital. And I hear from people all the time, I'm so tired of Zoom. I'm so tired of digital. You know, start using, you know, voice messages. There are just different ways, you know, change your backdrop so you don't feel like you're looking at the same things, but reach out. You have to get support. Please do not rely solely on self-help and your personal interpretation of what that person meant when they wrote the book, recorded the audio. I mean, this is why with my programs, there was a period of time, there was a chunk of time where I let people sign up and just listen to the course and do the work on their own, because that's what they said they wanted. And guess what? Their interpretations I don't know what to do. I don't understand. And then they'd end up paying, you know, like a la carte sessions to, you know, and so it's just, what we have to learn is this. We have to know how to add, edit, delete, make it our own, be able to have, effective processing spaces, right? Which means as I'm taking in this information, I have to have a way to effectively process it. I have to be able to effectively anticipate what it's going to look like going forward. And if it's new to you, if it's foreign to you, if it's not, if it's not as simple as, do 100 sit-ups at 8 a.m. and do 100 push-ups at 12 p.m. and do, I don't know, planks at 8 p.m. Like if it's not that cut and dry, which it's not, nothing psychological in nature is, you've got to have a support system and preferably at least one professional on your team. A lot of my clients work with a therapist because of trauma, trauma therapists, and then I work with them. Some of my clients, their trauma is low level enough that we can bring it in. But, my job is, to help people live in the moment going forward. So if we've got too much stuff to package up, heal, dump in the trash, whatever, you need to have a team. And so everybody needs to have a team. I have a team, and I've been doing this journey for 8 years, and I still have a team that is just for me, because everybody needs to be heard. And sometimes we just need to try it out somewhere before, like presenting it to everybody in our environment. But really you have to make sure that your interpretation of whatever it is you're trying to achieve, attain, or, create, that you have to make sure that your interpretation is effective, that your interpretation is on target, that it's not missing something, because you can do harm. You can do harm by trying to go it alone. And I just want people to, to hear that, right? We've got to properly educate ourselves. We've got to have the right, we have to have the right team, right support. And that doesn't always mean it has to, have a financial, thing attached to it, but you have to have it. Everybody needs it. Like the most successful people in the world have coaches.
Yeah, and that's part of educating yourself. Yeah, that's part of educating yourself, is educating yourself to find the right people. I utilized a therapist, a pastor, friends, shaman healers, energetic healers, a body worker, and also a coach who had lived through depression, survived it, and created a 12-week program, did that with him. That was really helpful. He's actually the one that helped me realize that my medication wasn't working, because we tracked my mood every week. He's like, "You're not stable. This isn't working." I was like, "Thank you." So I got off it. But yeah, and I couldn't afford everybody. So I found a lot of free resources. I utilized the Rape Crisis Center. I utilized RAIN. There are suicide helplines. There are support groups. There are AA groups. Actually, I learned that Al-Anon is not just for alcohol related stuff. If you survive any kind of trauma, you can go there. You qualify. You can be a part of that. NASCA is the Association of Childhood Abuse by people who are trained to lead trauma groups. So there are free resources too with professional people. So I get it. I couldn't afford everything. I'm on disability, for God's sakes. So I've had to be really creative in finding resources. Thank you for saying that. But I did it. And so.
Thank you for saying that.
Yep.
Right? Like,
you're welcome.
We can be on disability. We can be on state aid. We can, right? And there are resources. There's always a way when you have the right will.
Yes. And you just have to be persistent and keep talking to people, but not, hitting yourself against the wall, talking to the same person. That won't always work, but they might say something that's like, "Oh, I never thought of that. I should go find this person," because we have a community wraparound service. If you qualify for Medicaid, you can get free mental health wraparound services. That includes psychiatrists, mental health therapists 3 times a week They've got lifestyle coaches. They've got independent life skill coaches. I mean, it's there. If you're qualified for Medicaid, it's yours. See if there's a program like that in your area. Fortunately, I didn't, because I'm on Medicare, not Medicaid. But I researched all of these opportunities because I needed help badly.
Yeah.
So,
something else that you brought up that I think is really important. If you're working with a professional, and that professional, and you're just meeting with them week after week, and you're not seeing any forward moving momentum, or you don't feel like you're getting any improvement, maybe ask them to help you effectively track some things, because, Laura brought up something important, right? Like every week we tracked, like I logged my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my opinions, my beliefs, whatever, right? I have the same systems in my program. Like my clients check in with themselves on a very specific, schedule, on a routine. And then, twice, I'm sorry, it's just there's a routine. There's a morning and evening, and then there's the interim pieces, and we log everything, going forward. But then there's a separate log for your food and mood, right? Like, what am I eating, and what, all the things. And then, there's our movement tracking, and how sedentary we are. And because what we really want to be doing is we want to be dissecting with a positive purpose in mind, right? Like, clearly something's not working in my life. I don't know what it is. And I don't want to just keep putting a Band-Aid over here because I think that might be what it is. Like, you want to just look at yourself as the whole person, and let's observe and log, and let's start getting some statistics. Let's start getting some, data. We need the data to be able to analyze. So if your professional isn't helping you figure out how to accumulate data, ask. And if they don't know how to do that, that's fine. Find somebody that does. I mean, even if it's not something that is covered in the things that I offer, I'm always like, let's Google it. Let's see if there's something out there that's for this particular, whatever it is. And I found some really cool, like, social anxiety measures, and, like a lot of really cool things that we pull in, and we're like, okay, this is now part of your package. This is now part of your routine. It doesn't have to be made by me. I don't care. As long as it's what they need, we're going to pull it in. And that's what I do for myself in my own life, right? Like, if I feel like I'm, imposter syndrome's creeping up, I have my person I call for that. I have my women's circle that I utilize for that. And, because it's part of being who I am. Like, if I'm going to go into a new speaking environment, right? If I'm going to go do a public speaking something in a particular environment, some of that old dialogue wants to come up, and I'm like, nah, but you got to have your teams, got to have your support. You have to be your own advocate, and I don't know about Laura, but if you send me a direct message, I'm going to answer you. And if it's not something that I can help you with, I'm going to direct you. I'm going to make a suggestion. Like, sending a text or answering a direct message. Like, if people are unwilling to do that unless you pay them, then, maybe they're not the right person for you anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I have a Facebook group where I'm trying to build a group where we're supporting each other and healing from our stories. So you message me, you will hear from me, and we will talk. And then if you decide that you want to work with me, then we figure something out. But I'm always available within my time restraints. But so the one thing I wanted to mention is, data collection is really important. It's important to get the objective data, because my daughter's got autism, and her sense of time is not always accurate. So when we get really clear and actually time things, she's like, oh, because your perception may be different from what's actually happening. And the only way you can know that is by gathering data. However, it's also important. I'm a head person. I would live in my head all day, but I started getting healthier when my therapist, I've been working with my therapist for 3 years. I'm going to be in therapy my whole life because my trauma is just so complex. But She helped me ground, and I'm more in my body today than I ever was. And because I'm now able to connect into my body, I can trust my gut. So data is important, but your gut is just as valuable, that you need both. Otherwise you're out of balance. It's really about balance, and you'll know, because sometimes you think nothing's happening and a lot is happening, but you just can't see, oh, I really am making progress. And then there are times where your gut's saying, I know, but you got to stay with this person. This person feels good. You stay with that person, because it'll work itself out eventually. The truth will come, but sometimes you just don't see it in the moment. So yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for joining me today and just wrapping the month up. Next month we're gonna focus on addictions, on a little bit more, very specific, the different types and so on and so forth. But we're not in next month yet. We're still in March. This is the last week. I've been celebrating all month long because it's, I've been on this journey now for 8 years, and it's been amazing. And I'm just so happy to be able to, genuinely share that, you're not defined by, your titles, your diagnosis, your whatever, right? So I really appreciate everybody being here for this new series. Mastering the Drop is going to apply styles. Having amazing people like Laura here to help share their, to share the stories and shed some for friends. Anyway, and obviously y'all know how to, reach me. But for now, we're going to sign off. Thank you so much. We'll see you in another week or two.